Creditors are forgiving and tolerant. Debtors, unforgiving and intolerant. Are you tolerant? All religions, cultures, people.
How many people in here are familiar with Pastor Tony King? Remember that Pastor Tony King suggested way back when that part of his ministry was going to take people to the goal that he was shooting for. Well, was Pastor Tony King ministering to creditors or ministering to debtors? He's ministering to people that would be creditors. The goal was to get in control of an estate that belongs to you, not to the government. But the government has been controlling that estate under the presumption that we are all debtors and we're incapable of controlling our estate. And under trust law, the government must protect us from ourselves and control our estate. Now, if you're to get to the goal that Pastor Tony King was laying out, why would you be entitled to or have the authority to get to that goal? Would it be because you're demonstrating that you've accepted responsibility to be a creditor and can receive your estate because as a creditor you're competent to handle that? Or is the goal to bring a bunch of debtors in and have them take over an estate in which by being debtors they're defined to be incompetent? You understand what the issue is? If you're going to go in and get control of your estate, the one that the government is managing for you, shouldn't you demonstrate to the party that's holding the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries who are presumed to be incompetent? Shouldn't you be required to show competency such that the trustee, the government, is going to say, well, it appears as though this beneficiary is now competent to handle his own affairs, so we will release the estate to the beneficiary, i.e. the party that's just come in that's demonstrated competency. How are they going to test you for competency? Aren't they going to assume your communication, your acts, and your actions, and they're going to be giving you a grade as to whether or not you fall in the competency category or the incompetency category? And if you appear to be moving along this program that Pastor Tony King has been projecting at us, then based on your acts and on your actions, you will either be deemed qualified to be competent to receive your estate and control it, or they will deem you to be unqualified because you do not demonstrate in your life the role of competency. Can you see that? And isn't one of the main issues tolerance and forgiving? Why do you think this process of getting to Pastor Tony King's goal is being stretched out in time? Because it's just another test to see whether you are a party of competence as a creditor or a party of intolerance and incompetent, and you're only there for whatever a debtor is there for. Give me the money, and I have absolutely no traits. As a creditor, my intent is not to go serve my brother, just like the movie says, show me the money. That's all you're interested in, and that's all a debtor is interested in under greed and selfishness. Every time in your life these traits are coming up, and you are being tested to determine whether or not you are dealing with something in the mind and the heart, or whether you're dealing with something that would come out of a debtor. And a lot of the criticism that PTK is taking deals with traits that are coming out of debtors, which demonstrate those individuals do not have the standing and capacity to get the reward to which a competent party should be entitled, because they are proving their incompetence. That's what's happening to you in every one of your commercial cases. The judge is not there as your enemy. The judge is there to test you as the referee to see whether you qualify in merits as a creditor, or whether you do not pass the meritorious standard because you are a debtor and you do not qualify to be competent enough to handle your affairs as a creditor. Not everybody in life qualifies to be a creditor. If you look at the Old Testament, you see that the first king of unified Israel was Saul. But you see, during the time of his kingship, Saul was never trained to be a creditor. When he started his kingship, he did very good to begin with for the first couple of years, until problems started coming to the office of the king. And when problems started coming to the office of the king, how did King Saul react? He reacted as a debtor king. He blamed David for his failures. But look at David. David was the second king of unified Israel. There were only 3. And David said he was gonna be king, but there were years between the time that he was informed he was going to be king and the time he became king. What happened to David during those period of years? He was trained how to be a creditor. How would a creditor react? Don't blame Saul for your problems, David. Saul is your teacher. He is bringing you grief because Saul is not a creditor. You're being given an example of how not to be when you're a king. Learn from your enemy and learn how to be a creditor in the service of God. Learn how to do it right. We're going through a lot of hardships right now, not because our Father hates us, but He recognizes that you people were trained to be debtors. And He wants to turn you around and train you how to be a creditor, so that when you come into the gift that He's got for you, you will know how to use that gift as a creditor in His service, instead of using that gift and screwing it up as a debtor like King Saul did. That's what it's all about. These are extremely important things to understand in terms of how you're going to succeed in your life if you're going to be the servant and be the creditor that God wants us to be.
Creditors are unattached to being right. Debtors are very attached to being right. Debtors also like to make others wrong. I would say creditors are unattached to making anyone wrong or being right. Creditors acknowledge others' views. Doesn't mean you agree. Debtors make others wrong. Creditors put the best construction on all conditions and situations, rather than thinking and acting from worst possibilities. Creditors are faithful, and I mean that in the sense of having faith, and joyful
To increase your faith is simply to increase your obedience to your brothers and sisters, i.e., enhance your creditorship.
Be an honor in the law. Law is contract. Creditors, composed and peaceful. Debtors, agitated, hostile. I got a great story. I faced some very agitated and hostile individuals. And I maintained my composure and peacefulness. And I remained the creditor in control of the contract. Creditors are author of the experience. Debtors are victims of the experience. Are you responsible for what you create? Are you blaming others? Am I the author, creator, or am I the victim? Creditors are sovereigns, leaders, and masters. And I don't mean masters in the sense of having some sort of physical control over someone else. I mean masters of their lives, masters of their state of being, masters of their conditions. Debtors are subjects, followers, and slaves. Creditors are about what is. See, the tendency of human beings is to give things meaning under assumption and presumption. So someone comes to you and they say something or they act a certain way and you make assumptions and presumptions about that person. You're making it up. People are easy to read. And when you're in the experience and truly connecting with the person, it's a totally different reality than judging the words coming out of their mouth. And you can see much deeper. Creditors maintain authority. Now that's a skill. Debtors, they grant their authority to others. Very, very complacent in being subjects and slaves. Creditors are author creators. Debtors are victim destroyers. Creditors control their property. Debtors are the beneficial interest owners of their property. What was it Rockefeller said about ownership? Own nothing, control everything. Creditor has no concern about having title and names on his property as far as ownership is concerned. He is mostly concerned in having the paramount security controlling interest in property, not necessarily the beneficial ownership interest in property. Creditors promote unity. If you focus on division in any way, this is my country, this is that, this is whatever. See, to me, one of the poisons of our world is nationalism. I wept when I saw this country's reaction to 9/11. It was a very nationalistic type of reaction. It reminded me a lot of Nazi Germany and how poisonous that is to the world. You must be mindful of how you use your words, especially in being a creditor, both in relationship and in courts and in commerce. The words that come out of your mouth will very clearly show your intention. And your intention is very much a reflection of your views and thoughts. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Now, what you say is important, but it doesn't show as much as your conduct and actions what your intentions are. When you have clear thought, intention, speech, and actions, you can put that to use in your work. And I don't mean your job. What's your purpose? Why are you here? How do you conduct yourself? Coming back to consciousness and awareness. Are you present? Are you here? Are you awake? Speech, actions, and livelihood deal with ethical conduct. If you use these principles, are mindful of these principles, and are truly aware of how you're acting, how you conduct yourself, how you speak, this may be the most important thing in getting out of your state of suffering, or at least bringing down or limiting the level of suffering you have in your life.
You're either going to lead your life under the concept of love, which deals with the creditor, or you're going to deal in your life with the concept of law, where you're trying to fulfill some kind of law. That sounds good on the surface, but remember, in the spiritual world, we're unable in and of ourselves to fulfill the law. And we also know in our commercial society as it exists today that the law that exists in their courts is the law which is called statutory law, and we are physically unable to perform everything that exists under that statutory law because it's so large in volume that it's physically impossible to read it and know it. And if you violate that law, it's fundamentally you're unable to pay the penalty therefore, because in the public sector there is nothing except debt units by which to try to tender a set-off, and a debt cannot possibly pay a debt. So if you're trying to lead your life by fulfillment of the law, by your activities, you are unable to do that, and there is no remedy for you. So you have to understand that to be the creditor in your life, you have to lead your life under the concept of love your brother. That's what it's all about. That's what basically Brandon has shown you as the difference between the traits of a creditor who lives his life under love, or a debtor who is always trying to control everything by the fulfillment of the love or the law by your capacity. How many people in here saw the movie The Watchmen? Remember, there were 6 superheroes in that movie that were really divided down into 3 groups. The one group really appears to have had no interest in the law in terms of settlement whatsoever. And those 2 characters appeared to be the most powerful man in the world, the one that was represented by the glow, and the wealthiest man in the world, and also the smartest man in the world, which was the one that was directing the settlement or the resolution of the problem that existed in that story. The middle group was a man and a woman superhero that really took no position to the one extreme or the other. They were just out to help people individually. And then the 2 other superhero characters in the movie, one of them being basically the comedian and his friend who narrated the whole movie, which was our hero that was Rorschach. And what was the comedian and what was the Rorschach's personality and goals in trying to direct society? Weren't they extremely directed toward fulfillment of the law and everybody performing under the law? And in the outcome of that story, first of all, the comedian was dead. He had no effect on the outcome. And Rorschach, who was trying to direct the outcome based upon the fulfillment of the law through their actions, was totally incapable of performing that task. And in the whole story that they're telling you on The Watchmen, aren't they really telling you that love and solving the problem is more important than trying to direct your attention to resolving the issue of law, which we are incapable of performing, at least to get a remedy of in and of ourselves. And so it deals with creditors being on the side of love and debtors being on the side of trying to fulfill the obligations under the law, which because of the establishment of the system, we are unable to do within that jurisdictional venue.